The medical bay of the Crimson Dawn smelled like antiseptic and fear. Captain lay on the biobed, her left arm ending in a clean stump just below the elbow. The healing pods had done their work well, too well. The amputation was precise, surgical, designed to send a message rather than simply maim. "Captain, the Admiralty wants a full report," Lieutenant Torres said, his voice barely above a whisper. The young officer couldn't meet her eyes, couldn't look at where her hand used to be. Flexed the fingers that were no longer there, phantom pain shooting through neural pathways that led to nothing. "Tell them the hegemony has made their position clear. Humans are not welcome in the Outer Rim." 3 weeks ago, she had been the pride of Earth's colonial fleet. The youngest captain ever to command a deep space exploration vessel had broken through barriers that had stood for generations. Her crew respected her, her superiors praised her tactical mind, and the colonies saw her as proof that humanity could stand alongside any alien species in the galaxy. That was before they decided to demonstrate their superiority. The attack had come without warning. Ship had been conducting routine surveys in the nebula when the hegemony fleet materialized from hyperspace. 12 dreadnoughts, each one the size of a small moon, had surrounded the Crimson Dawn like predators circling wounded prey. "You will submit to inspection," the commander had transmitted. His voice carried the typical arrogance of his species, beings who had conquered half the known galaxy before humanity had even developed warp drive. "Your presence in hegemony space is a violation of the Accords." Had tried diplomacy first. The nebula was in disputed space, claimed by both the Earth Federation and the hegemony but controlled by neither. Her survey mission was perfectly legal under galactic law. They had different ideas about galactic law. They boarded her ship with overwhelming force, watched helplessly as her crew was herded into the cargo bay, weapons trained on them by soldiers whose technology made human military equipment look like stone knives. The boarding party leader, a towering figure in crimson armor, had approached with deliberate slowness. "You are the human commander." The translator rendered his words in perfect English, but could hear the underlying contempt in his natural voice. "Captain, Earth Colonial Fleet, this is an act of war against." The pain had come instantly. Looked down to see her left hand falling to the deck, severed by a blade of pure energy that had moved faster than her eyes could track. The weapon hummed as it cauterized the wound, preventing her from bleeding to death. "This is not war, human. This is education." The alien commander stepped closer, his 4 eyes studying space with clinical interest. "Your species believes it can claim equal status with races that have mastered the stars for. You will learn otherwise." Had remained standing despite the shock, despite the impossible pain. "My crew will carry word back to your Federation. Tell them that humans who venture into hegemony space will face consequences. Tell them that your kind's expansion has reached its limit." The release had been as swift as the capture. Within hours, and her crew were back aboard the Crimson Dawn, watching the fleet disappear into hyperspace. They left behind a message written in her blood and the absence of her hand. Humanity was not welcome among the stars. Now, 3 weeks later, stared at the ceiling of the medical bay while doctors attached a cybernetic prosthetic to her arm. The device was a marvel of human engineering, but it felt cold and foreign compared to the flesh it replaced. "Captain, there's been a development." Dr. Sarah entered the bay with a tablet in her hands. The ship's science officer had spent the last 3 weeks analyzing every scrap of data from their encounter with the hegemony fleet. "What kind of development?" Sat up, testing the responses of her new artificial hand. The servos whined softly as synthetic muscles engaged. "I've been studying the energy signatures from their weapons, particularly the blade that," gestured awkwardly at its prosthetic. "The technology isn't as advanced as we initially thought." Raised an eyebrow. "That weapon cut through reinforced titanium like it was paper." "Yes, but look at this." Activated her tablet, displaying a complex energy analysis. "The blade operates on a principle we actually understand, focused plasma contained in a magnetic field. They have simply scaled it up and refined the control systems." "You're saying we could build something similar?" "I'm saying we could build something better." Eyes blazed with the intensity remembered from their academy days. "Their technology is impressive, but it follows predictable patterns. They've been using the same basic principles for centuries, refining rather than innovating." stood and walked to the viewport, her new hand unconsciously clenching and unclenching. Outside, stars wheeled slowly as the crimson dawn maintained its position on the edge of human space. Each point of light represented worlds that humanity could explore, colonies they could establish, resources they could claim, if only they were strong enough to take them. How long would it take to develop this theoretical weapon? With the right resources, with access to the Federation's advanced research facilities, maybe 6 months for a prototype. And how long to develop something that could be mass-produced? Hesitated, what are you thinking? I'm thinking they made a mistake, turned from the viewport and was struck by the cold fury in her captain's eyes. They wanted to send a message about human weakness. Instead, they've given us a roadmap to their own destruction. The next morning stood before the Federation Defense Committee. The assembled admirals and politicians listened as she described the hegemony's attack, their obvious violation of galactic law, and their contempt for human sovereignty. She held up her prosthetic hand as she spoke, a visible reminder of alien arrogance. They believe they've proven their superiority, concluded. They think one demonstration of force will make humanity retreat to our home systems like frightened children. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Admiral Harrison leaned forward. Captain, your experience was traumatic, but we cannot risk open war with the hegemony. Their fleet outnumbers ours 50-1. Numbers don't matter if we have the superior weapons. Activated a holographic display showing analysis. We can build plasma blades that make their weapons look primitive. We can develop armor that turns their advantages into liabilities. We can give every human soldier the tools they need to make any alien think twice about underestimating us. Even if we could match their technology, Senator Williams interjected, the hegemony has allies. The Empire, the Crystal Syndicate, if we attack, though, we'll face half the galaxy. Smiled, and something in that expression made several committee members uncomfortable. Good. Let them all come. It's time they learned what happens when you back humans into a corner. The committee voted to approve's proposal by a narrow margin. She was given command of Project Retribution, with unlimited access to the Federation's best scientists and engineers. Her mission was simple: develop the weapons and tactics that would make humanity's enemies regret their arrogance. Its first stop was the Titan Research Station, orbiting Saturn in the Sol system. The facility housed the Federation's most advanced laboratories, staffed by scientists who had spent their careers pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. Many of them had been frustrated by military restrictions on their research, unable to pursue projects deemed too dangerous or aggressive. Those restrictions no longer applied. Captain, welcome to Titan Station. Doctor greeted her at the docking bay. Was the facility's director, a man whose reputation for brilliant and occasionally reckless experimentation had made him both famous and controversial. Doctor, I need weapons, not theoretical studies or peaceful applications. I need tools that will make aliens afraid to threaten humanity. Smile was predatory. Then you've come to the right place. My team has been working on some fascinating projects that the previous administration deemed too aggressive for development. As they walked through the station's corridors, explained the research programs that had been shelved or classified over the years. Plasma weapons that could cut through any known material. Armor systems that could absorb and redirect energy attacks. Stealth technology that rendered ships invisible to most scanning methods. They aren't the only ones who've been watching humanity, said as they entered his personal laboratory. Several species have been studying our military capabilities, looking for weaknesses to exploit. They all make the same mistake. They assume our technology defines our limitations. Examined the prototypes scattered around the lab. Most were incomplete, their development halted by bureaucrats who feared the implications of truly advanced human weapons. What mistake is that? They think like creatures who had the same technology they can't conceive of a species that adapts and improves as quickly as we do. Picked up a sleek metal cylinder from his workbench. This is a prototype plasma blade based on the design your science officer analyzed. It's 3 times more efficient and generates twice the cutting power. Took the weapon, feeling its weight and balance. The grip was designed for human hands, the controls intuitive despite the advanced technology hidden within. How many can you build? With full funding and no restrictions, we could equip every soldier in the Federation fleet within a year. You have 6 months. His eyes widened. Captain, that's impossible. The manufacturing requirements alone. Doctor, the cut off my hand to prove that humans don't belong among the stars. Activated the plasma blade, its brilliant energy casting shadows across the laboratory walls. I intend to prove them wrong. Whatever you need, resources, personnel, authorization, you'll have it. The only question is whether you want to be part of human history or a footnote in alien conquest records. That night stood in her quarters aboard the station, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The prosthetic hand looked almost real in the dim light, but she could feel the difference with every movement. They had taken more than just flesh and bone. They had taken her connection to her own body, her sense of physical completeness. But they had also given her something else: purpose, clarity, the absolute certainty that humanity's enemies would pay for their arrogance. Opened a secure channel to Earth Command. Admiral Harrison, this is Captain reporting from Titan Station. Project Retribution is officially. Captain, what's your assessment of our timeline? 6 months to prototype completion, 12 months to full deployment, 24 months to demonstrate that humanity is not a species to be trifled with. And if the hegemony discovers what we're doing? Looked at her prosthetic hand, flexing the artificial fingers that responded to her neural commands. Then they'll learn the same lesson they tried to teach me, Admiral. Actions have consequences, and some consequences cut deeper than they intended. The connection ended, leaving alone with her plans and her fury. Outside the viewport, Saturn's rings caught the light of the distant sun, a reminder of the beauty and vastness of space. Somewhere in that darkness, the hegemony continued their expansion, confident that they had cowed humanity into submission. They would learn otherwise. Began composing her first report to the research teams. Every detail of the hegemony's attack would be analyzed. Every weakness in their technology would be exploited. Every tactical doctrine would be studied and countered. They had started this conflict when they decided to make an example of a human captain. Now would finish it by making examples of them. The only question was how much of the galaxy would burn before her enemies understood the lesson she intended to teach. 6 months had transformed Titan Station from a research facility into something resembling a weapons factory. The corridors hummed with activity as teams of scientists and engineers worked around the clock to turn theoretical designs into deadly reality. Walked through the main laboratory complex, her prosthetic hand unconsciously checking the plasma blade at her side, the first production model of humanity's new weapon. Captain, the final tests are ready, Doctor called from across the testing chamber. She had requested transfer to the project 3 months ago, unable to resist the challenge of reverse engineering alien technology and making it better. Joined at the observation deck overlooking a massive testing arena. Below them, automated systems prepared targets ranging from standard hull plating to samples of armor recovered from previous encounters. The test weapon lay on a pedestal in the center of the chamber, a blade that looked deceptively simple but contained enough focused plasma to cut through a starship's hull. Initiate sequence, commanded. The weapon activated with a sound like controlled lightning. The plasma blade extended from its handle in a brilliant arc of contained energy, crackling with power that made the air itself seem to vibrate. The automated systems guided it through a series of precise cuts, slicing through each target with terrifying efficiency. Standard titanium steel, severed instantly. Reinforced ceramic composites carved apart like clay. Battle armor, the material that had seemed impervious during their encounter, split cleanly in half, its molecular bonds disrupted by the focused plasma field. Energy efficiency is 97%, reported, reading from her instruments. Cutting power exceeds our most optimistic projections by 40%. This weapon makes technology look like a museum piece. Nodded, but her attention was already moving to the next phase of their development program. The plasma blades were impressive, but they were only the beginning. Humanity needed more than individual weapons. They needed systematic advantages that would let them face alien fleets with confidence. Doctor, what's the status on the Aegis Armor project? Looked up from his workstation, his face bearing the exhaustion common to all project personnel. First prototype is ready for live testing, Captain. We've incorporated adaptive shielding that can absorb and redistribute energy attacks. In theory, it should make our soldiers nearly invulnerable to conventional alien weapons. In theory, what about in practice? That's what we're about to find out. The armor testing took place in a separate chamber designed to contain massive energy discharges. The test subject was a volunteer Marine named Sergeant, a career soldier who had specifically requested assignment to the most dangerous experimental programs. He stood in the center of the chamber wearing the prototype Aegis suit, its matte black surface rippling with embedded energy absorbers. "Sergeant, are you ready?" spoke through the intercom system. "Yes, ma'am. Hit me with everything you've got." The first test used captured weapons, energy rifles that could punch through conventional armor like paper. The beams struck dead center, their brilliant discharge filling the chamber with light. When the energy dissipated, the sergeant remained standing, his armor glowing softly as it processed the absorbed power. "No damage to the suit," reported. "Felt like someone tapping me on the chest." The tests escalated rapidly. Heavy plasma cannons, fusion bombs, even a miniaturized version of the energy blade that had Severed's hand. Each attack was absorbed and redirected by the Aegis armor, its adaptive systems learning and improving with each impact. "It's not just defense," explained as they watched shrug off weapons that could destroy a tank. "The armor stores absorbed energy and can redirect it as offensive capability. Watch this." Raised his armored fist and triggered the suit's discharge system. A lance of pure energy erupted from his gauntlet, striking a target drone and vaporizing it instantly. The power source was the same weapons that had been used against him moments before. Felt a cold satisfaction as she watched the demonstration. The had hurt her, humiliated her, tried to make her species bow in submission. Now she was watching human engineering turn their own weapons into tools of their destruction. "How many suits can we produce?" "With current manufacturing capacity, maybe a few hundred in the next year," replied. "But we're working on mass production techniques. Give us 18 months and we could equip entire armies." "You have 12 months. The Federation won't wait for perfection when opportunity presents itself." His next stop was the Strategic Planning Center, where military analysts had spent months studying alien tactics and developing countermeasures. The center's main display showed a three-dimensional map of the local galactic arm, with human territory marked in blue and alien holdings in various other colors. The hegemony dominated the map, its crimson markers spreading across hundreds of star systems. "Captain, we've completed our analysis of hegemony fleet movements," Colonel Martinez reported. Martinez was one of the Federation's most experienced tactical planners, a man who had made his reputation studying alien warfare patterns. "What have you learned?" "They're creatures of habit. The hegemony has used the same basic fleet doctrines for over 2 centuries. They rely on overwhelming force and technological superiority to crush opposition before it can organize effective resistance." Studied the tactical displays Martinez had prepared. They showed typical battle formations, standard attack patterns, and preferred strategic approaches. Where are their weaknesses? Adaptability. They assume their enemies will fight using predictable methods. When faced with unexpected tactics or superior technology, their command structure tends to freeze while waiting for orders from higher authority. How long does that decision paralysis typically last? Based on historical analysis of their conflicts with other species, between 6 and 18 minutes, depending on the complexity of the unexpected factor. Smiled, 6 to 18 minutes might not sound like much, but in space combat, that was an eternity. Modern weapons could destroy entire fleets in seconds if properly deployed. An enemy that hesitated for minutes would be destroyed before they could adapt. "Colonel, I want you to develop engagement scenarios based on our new weapons. Assume we can deploy plasma-armed soldiers and Aegis-armored Marines directly onto enemy vessels. How would traditional hegemony tactics cope with boarding parties that are immune to their weapons and carrying devices that can cut through their armor?" Martinez's expression grew predatory. "They wouldn't cope, Captain. Their standard anti-boarding defenses are based on energy barriers and automated weapon systems. Soldiers who could walk through their barriers and ignore their weapons would have free run of their ships." "Good. Draw up operational plans for simultaneous attacks on 12 hegemony outposts. I want detailed assessments of force requirements, logistics, and expected casualties." 12 simultaneous attacks? Captain, that would require. It would require the hegemony to spread their response across multiple fronts while dealing with technology they've never encountered. By the time they understand what they're facing, we'll control their forward bases and be in position to threaten their core systems. Left Martinez to his planning and made her way to the communications center. It was time to coordinate with the other components of Project Retribution, programs that had been developing in parallel across the Federation's most secure facilities. Captain, we have incoming priority transmissions from Luna Base, Mars Central and Station, the communication officer reported. Activated the secure holographic conference system. 3 figures materialized around the circular table: Admiral Singh from Luna Base, General from Mars Central, and Doctor from Station. Each represented a crucial element of humanity's preparation for war. Status reports, commanded without preamble. Admiral Singh spoke first. Our shipyard programs are ahead of schedule. The new Predator-class destroyers are completing final trials. They're 50% faster than our previous designs and carry enough firepower to engage hegemony cruisers on equal terms. General followed. Marine recruitment and training programs are exceeding targets. Word has spread about Project Retribution, and we're seeing volunteers from across the Federation. Every soldier wants a chance to prove that humans can't be intimidated. Doctor's report was equally encouraging. The Prometheus research program has achieved breakthrough results. We've developed hyperspace interdiction technology that can prevent enemy ships from entering or leaving specific systems. If deployed properly, we could trap entire hegemony fleets and destroy them at our leisure. Felt the familiar cold satisfaction that had sustained her through months of planning and preparation. The pieces were falling into place exactly as she had envisioned. They had thought they were dealing with a primitive species that could be cowed by a simple demonstration of force. They were about to learn that humans didn't respond to intimidation the way they expected. Coordination timing, said. I want all project elements ready for simultaneous deployment within 6 weeks. The hegemony has had months to forget about their lesson in human weakness. It's time to remind them. Captain, are we certain this is the right approach? Admiral Singh looked troubled. Once we begin active operations, there's no going back. The hegemony will have no choice but to respond with everything they have. Good, let them come with everything they have. Let every alien species in the galaxy see what happens when they underestimate humanity. The age of bowing to alien superiority ends now. The conference ended, leaving alone in the communication center. She called up the tactical displays once more, studying the positions of hegemony forces and the targets she had selected for the opening strikes. Each target had been chosen for maximum psychological impact, forward bases that the aliens considered impregnable, positions that would demonstrate humanity's new capabilities in unmistakable terms. The first target was Station, the same system where they had amputated her hand. The base served as a forward command post for their expansion into disputed space, protected by 3 squadrons of their most advanced warships, intended to destroy it completely, leaving no survivors to report what they had witnessed. The second target was the Vega mining complex, where engineers extracted rare elements needed for their weapons production. Eliminating it would cripple their ability to manufacture new equipment while demonstrating that humanity could strike at the heart of their economy. The remaining targets were scattered across hegemony space, chosen to force their military to respond on multiple fronts simultaneously. By the time they realized the scope of humanity's new capabilities, it would be too late to mount an effective defense. Walked to the viewport and gazed out at Saturn's rings, thinking about the path that had brought her to this moment. 6 months ago, she had been a disabled captain nursing her wounds and planning revenge. Now she commanded the most powerful military development program in human history. Her prosthetic hand clenched unconsciously as she remembered the pain, the humiliation, the casual arrogance of the commander who had maimed her. Soon, that same commander would understand what it felt like to be powerless against a superior enemy. Soon, every alien who had ever looked down on humanity would learn to fear the species they had tried to break. Captain, incoming transmission from Earth Command, the communication officer announced. Activated the channel to find Admiral Harrison's face appearing on the main screen. The old officer looked tired, burdened by the weight of decisions that would shape humanity's future. Captain, the Defense Committee has reviewed your operational proposals. We're prepared to authorize Phase 1 of Project Retribution. Understood, Admiral. My teams are ready to begin deployment immediately. Harrison paused, using her first name for the first time in their professional relationship. Are you certain we're ready for this? Once we cross this line, there's no telling where it will lead. Looked down at her prosthetic hand, remembering the moment when the blade had severed her flesh and bone. Admiral, they crossed the line when they decided to mutilate a Federation officer to make their point. Everything that happens next is a consequence of their choice, not ours. God help us all, Harrison murmured before ending the transmission. Returned to her quarters to prepare for the operational phase. Tomorrow, she would deploy to the Retribution, a prototype warship built specifically for the new type of warfare humanity was about to unleash. The ship incorporated every advance the project had developed: plasma weapons, Aegis armor for the crew, hyperspace interdiction systems, and tactics designed to exploit alien overconfidence. As she packed her few personal belongings, found herself holding the data pad containing her original mission reports from the nebula. The documents described routine survey operations, scientific discoveries, and optimistic assessments of future human expansion. They belonged to a different woman, one who had believed that diplomacy and mutual respect could overcome any conflict. That woman had died when the blade had taken her hand. In her place stood someone harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. Someone who understood that the galaxy respected only strength and that humanity's survival depended on being stronger than anyone who challenged them. Deleted the old reports and began composing new ones. Mission parameters: demonstrate human supremacy through overwhelming force. Expected opposition: alien species who mistake human restraint for weakness. Acceptable losses: whatever it takes to ensure that no alien ever again considers humanity an easy target. They had wanted to teach humanity its place. The Retribution emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system like a predator materializing from shadows. Stood on the bridge of the prototype warship, her prosthetic hand resting on the tactical console as sensors painted a picture of the target ahead. Station hung in space exactly where the commander had humiliated her 6 months ago, defended by the same 3 squadrons that had made her capture possible. Captain, enemy vessels are responding to our arrival, Lieutenant Commander Torres reported from the sensor station. 12 dreadnoughts moving to intercept. They're broadcasting standard warnings about unauthorized presence in hegemony space. Smiled coldly, open a channel to the station commander. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the same officer who had severed her hand. Commander looked exactly as she remembered, 4 cold eyes studying her with reptilian intelligence, hands that had wielded the energy blade with casual precision. His expression shifted from mild curiosity to genuine shock as he recognized her. Impossible, you were crippled. Your species was warned to avoid our territory. Commander raised her prosthetic hand, flexing the artificial fingers slowly. I promised myself that when I returned you would understand the price of underestimating humanity. Today, you learned that lesson. His mandibles clicked in what had learned was amusement. 1 ship against my entire force? Human arrogance exceeds even our estimates. Surrender now and your death will be swift. The only thing swift here will be your education about human capabilities. Cut the transmission and turn to her tactical officer. Major Reeves, deploy the Aegis teams. The Retribution's cargo bay had been converted into a deployment center for the war's new weapons. 50 Marines stood ready in their prototype armor, each carrying plasma blades that hummed with barely contained energy. These were humanity's elite, volunteers who had trained for months to use equipment that would have been science fiction a year ago. Major Sarah Reeves led the first squad, her Aegis armor gleaming under the bay's harsh lights. She had requested command of the most dangerous mission components, driven by the same fury that motivated every human involved in Project Retribution. Her younger brother had been killed during a raid on a Federation outpost 3 years ago. Teams Alpha through Charlie prepare for combat deployment, Reeves announced through the combat network. Remember your training. These aliens think they're superior to us. Today we prove them wrong. The deployment began with a demonstration of human tactical innovation that no alien species had encountered before. Instead of engaging the fleet at long range, the Retribution activated its new hyperspace displacement system. The technology created localized space-time distortions that could transport small teams directly onto enemy vessels, bypassing their shields and defensive systems entirely. Displacement fields active, the ship's science officer announced, locking onto the flagship's bridge section. Watch the tactical display as her teams materialized aboard vessels scattered throughout the formation. The aliens' first indication of intrusion was the sound of plasma blades cutting through their supposedly impenetrable armor plating. Aboard the flagship Sovereign's Wrath, Commander was issuing orders for a coordinated attack when his bridge's main entrance simply ceased to exist. The reinforced doorway fell away in two perfect pieces as a plasma blade carved through metal that had been designed to withstand ship-to-ship weapons. Major Reeves stepped through the opening, her Aegis armor absorbing the energy discharge from panicked guards. Their weapons struck her with enough force to vaporize conventional armor, but the adaptive shielding simply glowed brighter as it processed the absorbed power. Impossible, breathed, staring at the human who walked through his guard's attacks without slowing down. That seems to be your species' favorite word, Reeves replied as her plasma blade ignited. Let me teach you some new vocabulary. The fight was over in seconds. Warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves helpless against armor that made their weapons useless and blades that cut through their defenses like tissue paper. Reeves advanced through the bridge systematically, her armor storing the energy from their desperate attacks and redirecting it as devastating counterstrikes. Made a final desperate attempt at resistance, drawing the same energy blade he had used to maim. The weapon that had seemed impossibly advanced 6 months ago now looked primitive compared to human engineering. Reeves' plasma blade met his in a shower of sparks, and the weapon shattered instantly. Your turn to lose something, Reeves said as she reversed her blade and drove it through his armored torso. Similar scenes played out across the fleet. Human teams materialized in engineering sections, command centers, and weapons bays, encountering resistance that proved utterly ineffective against their new equipment. Aliens who had ruled through technological superiority discovered that their advantages meant nothing when facing enemies who had surpassed them. Captain, all 3 squadrons are neutralized, Torres reported from his station. Enemy casualties are 100%. We have 0 losses. Studied the tactical display, watching as the last vessel went dark. 12 dreadnoughts, ships that represented centuries of alien engineering and thousands of trained personnel, had been eliminated by 50 human Marines in less than 20 minutes. Begin salvage operations. I want complete technical intelligence on their systems. Also, prepare to deploy the Prometheus devices. The Prometheus devices were Doctor's masterpiece, hyperspace interdiction fields that could isolate entire star systems. Watched as her crew positioned the devices throughout the system, creating an invisible barrier that would prevent any reinforcements from arriving or fleeing vessels from carrying word of their defeat. Phase 2 is ready for implementation, announced to the bridge crew. Signal the other strike groups. Operation Retribution is now active across all target zones. Across hegemony space, identical scenes unfolded as human forces struck simultaneously at 12 carefully chosen targets. The Vega mining complex fell to Marines who walked through its defensive batteries and cut their way into the main processing centers. Frontier outposts that had controlled strategic hyperspace routes found themselves occupied by soldiers whose weapons made mockery of alien fortifications. Each attack followed the same pattern, human forces appearing without warning, enemy defenses proving inadequate, and total victory achieved with minimal casualties. The message was clear and unmistakable. Humanity had transcended the technological limitations that aliens had counted on to maintain their superiority. Captain, we're receiving emergency transmissions from hegemony command frequencies, the communication officer reported. Multiple distress calls from targeted systems. Their high command is demanding status reports from bases that no longer exist. Allowed herself a moment of satisfaction as she listened to the panicked alien voices trying to understand what was happening to their forces. They had built their empire on the assumption that superior technology guaranteed victory. They were learning that assumption could be fatally wrong. Open a general transmission on all hegemony frequencies. I want every alien in their empire to hear this. The bridge crew worked quickly to establish the broad-spectrum transmission. Within minutes, this image would be broadcast to every world, every military base, every government facility in their territory. This is Captain of the Earth Federation. 6 months ago, your forces attacked my ship and severed my hand to demonstrate human weakness. Today, I have returned that demonstration with interest. Raised her prosthetic hand, ensuring that every alien viewing would see the mechanical fingers that had replaced flesh and bone. 12 of your military installations have been destroyed. Every soldier defending them is dead. Their weapons could not penetrate our armor. Their defenses could not stop our advance. The transmission continued as walked through the bridge, her voice carrying the cold authority of someone who had just proven her species' supremacy in the most direct way possible. The hegemony claimed that humans do not belong among the stars. You tried to teach us our place through violence and intimidation. Instead, you have taught us that alien arrogance has limits, and we have reached those limits. Paused, studying a tactical display that showed the expanding zones of human control. Your expansion into Federation space ends now. Your colonization of disputed territories stops immediately. Any hegemony vessel found in systems claimed by humanity will be destroyed without warning. This is impossible, came a response transmission from what recognized as the hegemony capital world. Human technology cannot exceed ours. Our scientists have studied your capabilities for decades. Your scientists studied our old capabilities. They made the mistake of assuming we would remain static while you advanced. Gestured to the viewport, where the wreckage of dreadnoughts drifted among the stars. We are not the same species you encountered 6 months ago. We have adapted, evolved, and transcended every limitation you thought defined us. The response came from multiple hegemony sources simultaneously. Threats, demands for negotiation, pleas for explanation. Listen to the chaos with cold satisfaction, hearing the same arrogance that had cost her a hand slowly transforming into fear. There will be no negotiation, she announced, cutting through the alien voices. You made your position clear when you mutilated a Federation officer to make your point. Now you will learn what consequences look like when humans decide to make theirs. Ended the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. Major Reeves, what's the status on station itself? Fully secured, Captain. We've recovered extensive intelligence on hegemony military capabilities, including defense plans for their core systems. Excellent. Begin Phase 3 preparations. It's time to show the rest of the galaxy that humanity's demonstration of strength is just beginning. Phase 3 involved something no alien species expected. Human forces would advance deeper into hegemony territory, not to occupy it permanently, but to demonstrate that no alien military position was beyond their reach. Intended to strike at the very heart of power, proving that their most heavily defended worlds were as vulnerable as frontier outposts. Captain, we're detecting massive fleet movements throughout hegemony space, Tors reported. They're consolidating their remaining forces around their core systems. Let them consolidate. Concentrated targets are easier to destroy than scattered ones. Studied the intelligence reports flowing in from their recent victories. How long until our reinforcements arrive? The second and third fleets will reach their staging positions within 18 hours. Each fleet is equipped with full complements of Aegis Marines and plasma weaponry. Nodded, the reinforcements represented the culmination of Project Retribution. Entire fleets built around humanity's new technological advantages, crewed by personnel trained in tactics that no alien species had encountered. When they engaged the consolidated hegemony forces, it would be the largest space battle in galactic history. Signal all commands. In 18 hours, we advance to the home system. It's time to finish what they started when they decided to cut off my hand. The bridge crew worked with grim efficiency, preparing for a confrontation that would determine whether humanity's place among the stars would be decided by alien permission or human strength. Stood at the center of it all, her prosthetic hand unconsciously flexing as she planned the destruction of an empire that had thought itself untouchable. They had wanted to teach the home system had never been touched by enemy fire in its 3,000-year history. 6 massive fortress worlds orbited the system's primary star, each protected by defense networks that had been refined across centuries of military engineering. The ruling council had retreated to these strongholds as reports of human victories poured in from across their empire, confident that their ultimate redoubt could withstand any assault. They were about to learn how thoroughly they had misunderstood their new enemy. Stood on the bridge of the Retribution as the combined human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the system's edge. 300 ships materialized in perfect formation, destroyers, cruisers, and the new Devastator-class dreadnoughts that incorporated every lesson learned during Project Retribution. Each vessel carried Marines equipped with Aegis armor and plasma weapons, ready to bring the war directly to the heart of alien power. "Captain, enemy forces are responding," Commander Torres announced. Detecting over 800 hegemony vessels moving to intercept, they've concentrated everything they have left in this system. Studied the tactical display with satisfaction. They had done exactly what she'd hoped, pulled their scattered forces together in a desperate attempt to protect there. It would make their complete destruction much more efficient than hunting them across multiple systems. "Signal all fleet commanders. Implement Doctrine Omega. I want every alien in this system to understand what happens when they threaten humanity." Doctrine Omega was the most aggressive tactical framework human strategists had ever developed. Instead of engaging in traditional fleet combat at long range, human forces would use their new technologies to bypass alien defenses entirely and strike directly at enemy command centers. The goal wasn't just victory, it was the complete elimination of alien resistance capability. The engagement began with a demonstration that shattered every assumption about space warfare that alien species had held for. The human fleet didn't advance in formation to exchange fire with the defenders. Instead, they deployed Prometheus interdiction fields that created localized hyperspace distortions, allowing entire squadrons to appear inside enemy formations without warning. "Displacement successful," reported Captain Singh from the lead destroyer Nemesis. "We're among their heavy cruisers, beginning close-range engagement." Watched through tactical feeds as human vessels materialized within point-blank range of alien warships, their plasma weaponry carving through enemy hulls faster than gunners could target them. Ships that had seemed invincible at long range became helpless when human forces brought the fight directly to their bridges. The formation disintegrated within minutes. Captains who had trained for decades in conventional fleet tactics found themselves facing enemies who ignored every rule of engagement they understood. Human destroyers appeared inside their defensive perimeters, fired devastating salvos, and vanished into hyperspace before return fire could reach them. "This is impossible," came panicked transmissions from alien commanders. "Their ships are bypassing our shields, ignoring our weapons' range advantages. How are they doing this?" Opened a general transmission channel, her voice carrying across the chaos of battle. "The same way we developed armor that makes your weapons useless and blades that cut through your defenses. We adapted. We evolved. We became something you weren't prepared to face." The first Fortress World's defense network activated as human forces closed on the planet's surface. Massive energy projectors that could destroy conventional fleets in seconds targeted the approaching human vessels, their beams capable of vaporizing anything smaller than a dreadnought. The beams struck ship directly, washing over the Retribution's hull in waves of pure destructive force. The Fortress World's weapons were the pinnacle of defensive technology, designed to stop any conceivable assault. They weren't prepared for ships protected by scaled-up versions of Aegis armor. "Minimal damage to hull systems," the engineering officer reported calmly. "Adaptive shielding is processing the absorbed energy. Weapons are charging for return fire." Smiled as she watched her ship's energy reserves climb rapidly. The Fortress World's own weapons were powering the human response that would destroy it. "All ships, begin planetary bombardment. Show them what their own energy looks like when it's properly focused." The human fleet opened fire with weapons that redirected the absorbed energy from alien attacks into precisely targeted strikes. Fortress guns that had fired on human ships found themselves destroyed by their own power, redirected through systems that had never imagined possible. Major Reeves led the first wave of surface assault teams, her Aegis-equipped Marines deploying directly onto the Fortress World's command centers. The transition from space combat to ground assault happened so quickly that alien defenders had no time to adjust their tactics. "Deploying on target Alpha," Reeves reported through the combat network. "Enemy resistance is negligible. Their ground forces use the same ineffective energy weapons we've already countered." Watched through helmet cameras as human Marines advanced through defensive positions that had been considered impregnable. Fortress walls that could withstand orbital bombardment crumbled before plasma blades wielded by soldiers whose armor absorbed every defensive weapon fired at them. The Fortress World's command center fell within an hour. Reeves personally eliminated the hegemony general who had coordinated the defense, her blade cutting through his ceremonial armor as easily as it had sliced through starship hulls. The ancient stronghold that had protected rulers became humanity's forward base in less time than it typically took to plan an assault. "Captain, we're receiving surrender offers from the remaining Fortress Worlds," Tors announced. "Multiple hegemony commanders are requesting terms for negotiation. Patch me through to their leadership council." The main screen flickered to reveal the ruling chamber, where the Empire's highest officials huddled in obvious terror. Recognized several faces from intelligence briefings, beings who had overseen the conquest of dozens of worlds, who had personally ordered the subjugation of countless species. "Supreme Leader," addressed the central figure, "I remember you from our intelligence files. You signed the order authorizing attacks on Federation vessels in disputed space." Sfour eyes focused on with what she had learned to recognize as barely controlled panic. "Captain, this conflict has escalated beyond reasonable bounds. The hegemony is prepared to discuss territorial concessions." "I'm not interested in concessions," cut him off coldly. "You had your chance for reasonable discussion when your forces attacked my ship. You chose violence over diplomacy. Now you live with the consequences of that choice. But surely you cannot intend to destroy our entire civilization over a single incident." "A single incident?" His voice carried decades of suppressed fury. "You amputated my hand to send a message about human inferiority. You broadcast recordings of my mutilation across the galaxy to demonstrate that humans could be brutalized with impunity. You turned my pain into propaganda for your species' superiority." Raised her prosthetic hand, its mechanical fingers gleaming under the bridge lights. "Now I'm sending a message about human superiority. Every alien species in the galaxy is watching this transmission. They're learning what happens when someone tries to prove that humans are weak." The response came from another voice in the council chamber, General, the hegemony's supreme military commander. "Even if you destroy our forces here, you cannot defeat the entire galactic community. The Empire, the Crystal Syndicate, the Ethereal Collective, they will unite against this human aggression." Laughed, the sound carrying no warmth or humor. "General, you still don't understand. We're not just defeating the hegemony. We're demonstrating to every alien civilization that the age of their dominance is over." "Impossible. No single species can challenge the established galactic order." "Watch us," ended the transmission and turned to her fleet commanders. "Signal all ships. Begin implementation Protocol 7. It's time to show the galaxy what human determination looks like when properly motivated." Protocol 7 was the most ambitious component of Operation Retribution. Simultaneous strikes against every major alien civilization that had supported or enabled aggression. Human forces that had been staging in secret locations throughout the galaxy would reveal themselves and demonstrate that humanity's technological advancement wasn't limited to a single system. "Captain, we're receiving confirmation signals from strike groups throughout the galactic arm," the communication officer announced. "Forward bases, Crystal Syndicate mining worlds, Ethereal Collective research stations, all targets are under simultaneous attack." Watched as reports flooded in from across known space. Human forces equipped with Aegis armor and plasma weapons were proving that the technological advantages demonstrated against the applied equally to every alien species. Civilizations that had ruled were discovering that their weapons, tactics, and defenses were obsolete when facing an enemy that had transcended their limitations. "This is Captain from the Vindication, reporting from space," came one transmission. "Their defensive fleets are neutralized, deploying Marines to secure their military command structures." "Captain from the Retribution, engaging Crystal Syndicate forces near the Andromeda Gate. Enemy vessels are unable to penetrate our armor systems, beginning systematic destruction of their fleet elements." "Captain from the Devastation, operating in Ethereal Collective territory. Their psychic weapons are ineffective against our armored personnel, advancing to secure their home system." Listened to the reports with cold satisfaction. Every alien civilization that had looked down on humanity was learning the same lesson simultaneously. The galaxy's established power structure was crumbling, as human forces demonstrated their new supremacy across hundreds of worlds. Captain, we're detecting massive communication traffic between alien governments, Tors reported. Emergency council sessions, military mobilizations, panic evacuations. The entire galactic community is responding to our operations. Good, let them respond. Let them mobilize every ship, every weapon, every soldier they have. It won't matter. Gestured to the tactical displays showing human victories across known space. They built their civilizations on the assumption that they would always be stronger than humans. That assumption is now proven false. The final assault on the home system proceeded with mechanical efficiency. Human forces systematically eliminated every defensive position, secured every strategic location, and captured every government facility. The empire that had lasted 3,000 years fell completely within 18 hours. Personally led the final assault team into the hegemony's Supreme Council chamber. The ancient hall had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of alien species, but it had never seen its own rulers cowering before an enemy they had underestimated. Supreme Leader, announced as her Marines secured the chamber. By order of the Earth Federation, you and your government are under arrest for crimes against humanity. Your empire is dissolved. Your military forces are disbanded. Your territory is now under Federation administration. Looked up at the human commander who had destroyed his civilization with something approaching awe. How? How did your species advance so quickly? Our scientists predicted it would take humans centuries to match our technology. Drew her plasma blade, its energy casting harsh shadows across the ancient chamber. Your scientists made the same mistake your military did. They assumed humans would develop like other species, slowly, predictably, following established patterns. The blade hummed with power that exceeded anything in science. They didn't account for what happens when you give humans proper motivation, when you show us exactly what we need to surpass, when you make the mistake of cutting off our hand and expecting us to surrender. Deactivated the blade and gestured to her Marines. Secure the prisoners. Prepare them for transport to Federation holding facilities. Their trial will serve as an example to any alien civilization that considers challenging human authority. As her forces completed the occupation of the capital, received a priority transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Harrison's face appeared on her personal communicator, his expression mixing pride with concern. Captain, reports from across the galaxy indicate complete success for Operation Retribution. Every targeted alien civilization has been neutralized or secured. The galactic balance of power has shifted decisively in humanity's favor. Understood, Admiral. What are the reactions from non-hostile alien species? Universal surprise, fear, and immediate diplomatic overtures. Every government that previously ignored or dismissed human concerns is now requesting immediate negotiations. They're offering territorial concessions, trade agreements, and security partnerships. Nodded, they're offering now because they finally understand that refusal isn't an option. Fear is an excellent teacher when properly applied. What you've accomplished exceeds our most optimistic projections. But I have to ask, what happens now? How do we manage a galactic empire we never intended to conquer? Looked out at the stars surrounding the former capital, each point of light representing worlds that now acknowledged human supremacy. Her prosthetic hand flexed unconsciously as she considered the future that lay ahead. We manage it the same way we want it, Admiral. We demonstrate that human superiority isn't temporary or accidental. We show the galaxy that any species that challenges us will face consequences they can't survive. Paused, remembering the moment 6 months ago when a blade had taken her hand and changed the course of galactic history. The aliens taught us 1 year after the fall of the hegemony, stood in the Grand Council chamber of New Terra, the capital world of humanity's expanding galactic domain. The chamber had been built to accommodate representatives from dozens of species, each seeking audience with the Federation leadership that now controlled the fate of civilizations across known space. Today's session was particularly significant. The Galactic Reconciliation Council was meeting to formalize the new order that had emerged from Operation Retribution. Watched as alien delegates filed into their assigned sections, their body language displaying the mixture of respect and fear that had become humanity's most effective diplomatic tool. Ambassador of the Empire approached position with careful steps. The diplomat had once represented a civilization that considered humans barely evolved primates. Now she struggled to maintain dignity while acknowledging the reality of human supremacy. Director began, using his new title as head of the Federation's Alien Relations Department. My government has prepared the mineral extraction agreements you requested. The concessions include mining rights to 17 systems and preferential shipping arrangements. Examined the data pad with her prosthetic hand, the mechanical fingers moving with precise efficiency. The quantities are acceptable, but I notice your government has excluded the system from the agreement. That system holds particular significance for human relations. His compound eyes registered distress. Director, the system has been traditional territory for over 800 years. Surely some accommodation. Ambassador, the system is where forces mutilated a Federation officer to demonstrate alien superiority over humans. His voice carried the cold authority that alien diplomats had learned to fear. Every species that supported or enabled that action forfeited their territorial claims when they chose to endorse violence against humanity. Stood and activated a holographic display showing the current galactic map. Human blue now dominated the display, with smaller pockets of alien-controlled space scattered throughout. Your Empire's mining concessions are not requests, Ambassador. They are notifications of how your territory will be administered under the new galactic order. His mandibles clicked in distress, but she nodded acceptance. The Empire had learned the same lesson as every other alien civilization. Resistance to human demands led to swift and overwhelming retaliation. Had personally overseen the destruction of 3 military bases when their government had initially refused Federation resource requirements. The agreements will be signed and implemented immediately, confirmed. Is there anything else the Federation requires? Your military's cooperation in the subjugation of the ethereal collective resistance cells. Our intelligence indicates merchants are supplying weapons to insurgent groups in the Andromeda sector. Watched its expression carefully. The ethereal collective had been one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations before human forces had systematically dismantled their government and military. Scattered resistance groups now conducted guerrilla warfare against Federation occupation forces, forcing to maintain garrison troops across dozens of worlds. Director, my government has no official contact with collective resistance groups. Ambassador, I didn't ask about official contact. I asked about your merchants' activities. His prosthetic hand gestured to the holographic display, highlighting trade routes that connected space with former collective territory. Federation intelligence is very thorough. We know about the weapons shipments, the financial support, and the communication networks your people are providing. Silence confirmed what already knew. Even defeated alien species couldn't resist the temptation to support resistance against human rule, hoping that some combination of insurgency and alliance could restore their former independence. Had expected this response. Alien psychology followed predictable patterns. They would submit when faced with overwhelming force, but they would always seek opportunities to undermine human authority when they thought such action could succeed without immediate consequences. The Federation will deploy monitoring stations throughout space to prevent future support for resistance activities, announced. Your government will provide full access to shipping records, communication networks, and financial systems. Any interference with Federation oversight will be considered an act of rebellion. Director, such extensive monitoring would effectively end sovereignty. Ambassador, sovereignty ended when your empire chose to support aggression against humanity. What you have now is conditional autonomy, granted by Federation mercy and subject to immediate revocation if your people prove unworthy of our trust. Terminated the audience and moved to her next appointment. The day's schedule included meetings with representatives from 8 different alien civilizations, each seeking concessions or clarification of their status under human rule. Every conversation followed similar patterns, alien attempts to negotiate better terms followed by human reminders of the consequences of resistance. Her assistant, Commander Sarah, approached with another data pad. Had been promoted to head of the Federation Intelligence Service after her success in analyzing alien technology during Operation Retribution. Her department now monitored communication across the galaxy, ensuring that no alien conspiracy could develop beyond Federation awareness. Director, we've intercepted communications indicating a potential alliance forming between the Crystal Syndicate and several minor species in the Outer Rim, reported. They appear to be planning coordinated resistance against Federation resource extraction operations. Studied the intelligence summary. The Crystal Syndicate had been one of the last alien governments to submit to Federation authority, and their defeat had been particularly thorough. Had personally overseen the bombardment of their capital world after they refused to surrender their advanced manufacturing facilities. How many species are involved in this potential alliance? 17 confirmed, with indications that others may be considering participation. They're using quantum encryption and distributed communication networks to avoid our monitoring systems. Smiled coldly. They're learning from their previous mistakes. That shows intelligence, if not wisdom. What assets do we have available for response operations? The Fifth Fleet is completing pacification operations in the Perseus Arm. They could be redeployed to address the conspiracy within 2 weeks. Deploy them immediately. I want every species involved in this potential alliance to understand that resistance to Federation authority will not be tolerated. Paused, considering the broader implications. Also, expand the surveillance network in the Outer Rim. I want real-time monitoring of all alien communication in that sector. His next meeting was with Admiral Harrison, who had requested a private consultation about the long-term implications of humanity's rapid expansion. The old officer had supported Operation Retribution from the beginning, but knew he sometimes questioned the scope of human ambitions that had grown from her original quest for revenge. The Federation Council is concerned about the resources required to maintain control over our expanded territory, Harrison began. Garrison forces for 17 different species, monitoring systems for hundreds of worlds, administrative personnel for managing alien populations. The logistical requirements are enormous. Gestured to a strategic display showing Federation territory and resource flows. Admiral, our expansion has given humanity access to resources that exceed Earth's entire industrial capacity. Alien worlds provide rare minerals, advanced manufacturing capabilities, and agricultural products that have increased human living standards by orders of magnitude. But at what cost? We have fleets scattered across the galaxy, intelligence operatives monitoring every alien communication, and administrative systems that require constant oversight. Are we building an empire or creating a burden that will eventually collapse under its own weight? Considered the question carefully. Harrison raised valid concerns about imperial overstretch, the same issues that had eventually weakened every historical empire on Earth, but believed that humanity's situation was fundamentally different from previous imperial experiences. Admiral, traditional empires collapsed because they lacked the technology to effectively manage distant territories. We have instantaneous communication across galactic distances, transportation systems that can deploy military forces anywhere in known space within hours, and monitoring capabilities that let us detect problems before they become serious threats. Activated another display showing economic data from across Federation territory. More importantly, we're not just extracting resources from subject worlds. We're demonstrating human technological superiority in every interaction. Every alien species sees daily evidence that resistance is futile and cooperation is rewarded. Harrison studied the data with the analytical mind that had made him one of the Federation's most effective military leaders. The numbers are impressive, but I worry about the psychological effects on our own people. Are we becoming the kind of species that rules through fear rather than inspiring voluntary cooperation? His expression hardened. Admiral, voluntary cooperation was what we tried before they decided to mutilate a Federation officer to prove their superiority. The galaxy's response was to ignore the incident and continue treating humans as inferior beings who could be abused with impunity. She raised her prosthetic hand, the mechanical fingers flexing with precision that exceeded biological capability. Fear and respect are different terms for the same thing when applied to relations. Aliens respect us now because they fear the consequences of disrespect. That fear keeps the peace and prevents conflicts that would cost millions of lives. But what happens to humanity in the long term? Are we becoming so focused on maintaining control that we lose sight of the values that made our species worth defending? Walked to the viewport and gazed out at the bustling orbital platforms surrounding New Terra. Ships from dozens of worlds brought cargo and passengers to the Federation capital, their alien crews following human traffic control directives with meticulous precision. The site represented order, prosperity, and security that had never existed in the galaxy's previous history. Admiral, our values include protecting human interests and ensuring that no alien species ever again believes they can threaten humanity without consequences. Everything we've built serves those values. Turned back to Harrison, her expression carrying the absolute certainty that had driven her through months of planning and warfare. The galaxy is more peaceful now than it has been in centuries. Alien civilizations focus their energies on productive activities rather than conquest and war. Trade flows efficiently under Federation oversight. Scientific advancement proceeds without the military competition that previously drove technological development. And if alien species eventually develop technologies that challenge our advantages, if they find ways to overcome our current superiority, smiled with cold confidence, then they'll discover that human adaptability applies to more than just weapons development. We've proven that our species can innovate faster and more effectively than any alien civilization. If they force us to demonstrate that capability again, the results will be even more decisive than Operation Retribution. The conversation ended with Harrison's grudging acceptance of strategic vision. The Admiral remained concerned about long-term implications, but he couldn't argue with the results that human supremacy had achieved. The galaxy was indeed more stable and prosperous under Federation leadership than it had ever been under the chaotic competition between alien empires. His final meeting of the day was with Dr., who had continued developing advanced technologies even after humanity's military supremacy was established. Laboratories now focused on ensuring that human technological advantages remained insurmountable, no matter how alien science might advance. Director, the Prometheus research program has achieved another breakthrough, announced with excitement that reminded of their first meeting at Titan Station. We've developed manufacturing systems that can produce Federation technology faster than any alien industrial capacity can match. Examine the technical specifications provided. The new systems could produce plasma weapons, Aegis armor, and hyperspace drives at rates that would allow humanity to equip armies large enough to occupy entire galactic sectors. What are the resource requirements for full deployment? Surprisingly modest. The systems are designed for maximum efficiency and minimal waste. We could establish production facilities on any world with basic industrial infrastructure within 6 months. Nodded approvingly. Begin implementation immediately. I want production capabilities distributed across our entire territory. If any alien species attempts to challenge our authority, they should face overwhelming human forces equipped with weapons they cannot match. As departed to coordinate the new production program, remained alone in her office, contemplating the transformation that had begun with a blade taking her hand. The pain of that moment had evolved into purpose, then into planning, and finally into the systematic reconstruction of galactic civilization under human leadership. Her prosthetic hand rested on the desk beside reports from across the galaxy, all confirming that alien species continued to submit to Federation authority, that resistance movements remained ineffective against human surveillance, and that the economic benefits of empire were transforming human civilization into something unprecedented in galactic history. Activated her personal communicator and contacted the Federation Council on Earth. This is Director reporting from New Terra. Galactic stability remains optimal. All alien territories are operating within acceptable parameters. No significant threats to Federation authority have been detected. Thank you, Director, came the response from President Martinez. The Council continues to be impressed by the effectiveness of your administration. Earth's population is experiencing unprecedented prosperity thanks to the resources and stability your policies have created. Smiled as she ended the communication. The girl who had lost her hand to alien arrogance had become the architect of human dominance across known space. Every species that had once looked down on humanity now acknowledged their superiority. Every world that had been to human expansion was now open to Federation colonization. They had intended to teach humanity its place in the galactic hierarchy. Instead, they had triggered the rise of the first truly galactic human empire. His prosthetic hand had become a symbol not of human vulnerability, but of the terrible consequences that awaited any species foolish enough to underestimate human determination. Looking out at the stars that now acknowledged human authority, reflected on the lesson she had learned from her enemies and taught to the galaxy, cutting off a human's hand was not a demonstration of your superiority. It was a guarantee that she would return with a sword sharp enough to cut down empires, and the will to use it until every alien in the galaxy understood exactly who ruled the stars. An important lesson about power and respect. Now we'll teach them that humans are exceptional students who always exceed their teachers' expectations. About consequences, was about to demonstrate that they were excellent students who always exceeded their teachers' expectations. The only question remaining was whether any aliens would survive the lesson long enough to remember the galactic hierarchy, was about to teach them theirs.